Hello, everybody. My name is James. Welcome to the Clayton and James Show. And I got Europa League final tickets in my basket. Clayton, how are you, mate?
I'm good. I don't have Champions League tickets in my basket.
Sorry, mate. We'll save that conversation for our Patreon podcast a little bit later on today. Got a number of topics we want to cover off today. As said, we're going to talk a little bit about Marinakis, obviously going on the pitch after Forest draw with Leicester. We'll have a little bit of chat about Crystal Palace ahead of their massive FA Cup final against Manchester City on Saturday. A little roundup of some of the things going on in some of the European leagues at the moment. Eurofocus takes us to Real Betis and Chelsea's Conference League final opponents. And on this day is from a very famous FA Cup final ahead of that big game on Saturday. But we kind of ran out of time yesterday because Clayton's got more important things in his life than podcasting. So we did say we'd cover off a couple of FPL questions to start this show. So, Clayton, off you go.
So, first one was from BGFC FPL on Twitter, also known as X. When and who is the best triple captain? So, for those that still have that left, who are you picking it on?
I personally would go probably Mo Salah, game week 24. Um, I mean, he's scraping the barrel a bit. What I would say is, I think, and discussing with a few of our patrons yesterday, nothing for captaincy feels quite great this week. I don't think like the closer Villa Tottenham gets, and the more I convince myself Tottenham are going to pick a strong team, the more I think, not, I'm not, oh, we're going to win at Villa. But the more I think it's not, Villa aren't going to play the team that Crystal Palace played on Sunday, right? Let's put it that way. So I think a lot of people want to go Watkins or Palmer, but neither are hugely convinced. I mean, Jackson being suspended is not good for Cole Palmer on Friday night, by the way. We've spoken about things like, say, Bumo Visser against Fulham, and if Palace win on Saturday, it's like it's a dead rubber all of a sudden. Salah at Brighton is always obviously an option, but slots out in Ibiza, and I don't know if he if fair game to him. I don't know if he gives a shit. The City and Palace players arguably would have been quite interesting, but with the games on Tuesday following the cup final Saturday, it doesn't really feel like you can take that route either. So it's wide open this week. And I think ultimately in 38, you'll feel more confidence in something else, be it a Saka at Southampton or even punt like a Bowen against Ipswich, Evan Nilsson against Leicester, Salah with a home game against Palace before they lift the trophy, Isak if he's fit, although there is more and more rumours that he might be carrying a problem, actually, Alexander Isak. But Isak against Everton, final day. I feel like the majority of them I've just mentioned, if they were this week, I'd want to take over most of the options this week. So I think it's you don't need to make a decision now, but I'd hold it for 38.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one out of all of the ones you said, I'd probably keep it for Salah. Final day of the season, Palace at home.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Right, next one. Alex, FPL Physics. Does this week show that sometimes doing nothing is the best strategy when leaks create late panic? A lot of Marmouche replacements not doing well, and some, me included, benching points instead. I wasn't actually online for all of the late panic around deadline, but yeah, I think a lot of people seem to have been caught out a little bit or rushed into something they hadn't planned for.
Yeah. So I mean, the main news that was out it was obviously that Haaland was going to start, De Bruyne was going to start, and Marmouche wasn't. So I don't think, and it wasn't even. To be honest, the info came through sort of like 20 minutes before deadline, so it wasn't even like a panic thing. And I think the best thing you can do in these circumstances is know what you're going to do. So I said when I started the deadline stream an hour before deadline, I said, look, if Marmouche is not playing, I'm going to buy Cunha. So you're not created with this decision paralysis. Is like, well, if that's the information, this is what I'm going to do. So if you do that, you avoid the panic. Do I regret making the transfer? Not at all. I've got the information in front of me, and he's not playing. There's 3 game weeks to go. What am I holding for? So, Mateta particularly was very unlucky in the sense that he didn't score and also went off about 5 seconds before the 60th minute just to add insult to injury. Cunha, obviously, as we said, was a little bit lucky that he didn't actually get sent off, right? But if I go back and make the decision again, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I already owned Visser. I think anybody who went Marmoush to Visser was completely understandable. Anyone who went early on a Watkins or an Evan Nilsson, completely understandable. Ultimately, nearly all the forwards basically are Watkins, not really done shag all this week, right? And I feel like I owned Watkins the week before and it felt like everybody else did and Watkins didn't, right? So, no, I think the best advice you can have for people is like when you're building up towards that deadline, just know what you're doing. So, like, it would be a weird one, and I wouldn't go bother saying it on Friday night. But what happens if there was a leak and Watkins isn't starting for Villa? Now,
Well,
there's
what would you
not
have done then?
zero
Yeah.
reason why that would happen. But before I get there, I'm going to know what I'm going to do. I don't know what that is at the moment, but by the time I get there Friday night, I'll know if something drops. It's like, oh my God, shit, I wasn't expecting that because you wouldn't. Then you can panic. But I'll already know in my mind what I would do under that sort of circumstance.
Yeah.
So
I
I think it's easily avoidable, and I think people who made transfers did the right thing.
I actually own Marmouche, but like I said, I wasn't online. If I was online and I had the information that he wasn't starting, as it transpired he didn't, I would have made the move, even knowing in hindsight that people would have blanked. It's again the doing the best moves you can with the information you have at the time. That's all
So,
you can do. And over 38 game weeks, you just got to bank on the probability that you make more good decisions than bad. Simples.
and at that point for me, at 1:30, when the deadline's hit, it's like I'm happy with the decision. I have no control over the outcome after that. Speak about this all the time. Be happy with the decisions. The outcome sometimes will go your way, sometimes it won't.
Another one from one of our patrons, our good friend Robert Pugsley, Pugs Wizard on X. His rank is a mere 600k, but he's been on a good run for the last 5 weeks. He's got one more week of Arseman before game week 38 wildcard. He's asking if Hertzilla is a reasonable punt for table bonus versus Liverpool. And I guess that could be a nice way to think about other Arseman opportunities, table bonus. Are there any safety ones you can bank on for this week for people that still have that chip? I think the boss played
Um,
his, Such.
yeah, he was on Pep.
Oh, was he on Pep?
Yeah, I
Oh,
mean, and you can't
nil
blame
nil.
him, can you? Like,
No.
again, it's another one. Outcome's outcome. You put him in the same position, he made exactly the same decision again because obviously it landed where the only bonus games were the bottom three. So no one wanted any of that. If he could have known that Leicester or Southampton would have got a draw, maybe he would have done that instead. But you just wouldn't. With Guardiola, you think, oh shit, it's 9, 10 points. Okay, I'll take that, and we'll move on. In terms of this week. I don't think the straightforward ones are as quite as obvious. There were a couple like City at Southampton. Yes, I know they didn't win. You'd think, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with those selections. This week, you probably are going to what Maresca and Emery because of the Tottenham United situation with the final. Arsenal against Newcastle was fine, but it doesn't scream at
I
you.
don't love that, no.
City at home to Bournemouth. I think whatever happens with City on Saturday, and I spoke about this with Pep when we first knew about Arsenal. Was like, I'd like to have Pep at the end because I don't have to worry about which City players are going to start with him because you're getting the Guardiola points either way, and they'll need to beat Bournemouth. It looks like on Tuesday. So arguably for the straightforward ones, if you're on Pep, I'd probably stick with Pep. Certainly wouldn't move that. A lot of people last week moved like from Glasner to Pep. I understand why that choice was made. That obviously looks regrettable in hindsight. Of the bonus ones, I don't think you could go Ange or Amrim. Although for those who started in 36, it's worth noting that both teams will obviously have back-to-back bonus games in 37 and 38. But 38, one of them's going to be drunk and the other one's going to be depressed. So I don't, I don't know how well that's going to work out for you. So I think this week, if you're moving, you do want to attack bonus. Therefore, it's Hertzler against Liverpool or Potter against Forest.
Yeah, and you mentioned yesterday you weren't so high on Forest going to West Ham and getting a result.
No, particularly if Murillo wasn't available again, that would be decisive for me to definitely want to go Potter. That would be my preference anyway, is to go for Potter of the two.
Fair play. Do you have any from Blue Sky? I'm not on the socials on that platform.
Yeah, can do a couple here. FPL Jill says if FPL rules don't change next season, will you consider bench boost game week one again? Depends on the fixtures, but ultimately the answer to that is yes. FPL toast will City and Palace rotate for their next game. How long's a piece of string, isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, you kind of spoke about the Palace perspective on that yesterday, right? Well, and City, to be fair.
Um, yeah, I mean Palace is a little bit easier. We spoke about. I think like Mateta would be one I'd be really looking at moving on if you didn't. Because that's one you could. I could definitely see Nketiah starting. I spoke about this yesterday. Like the back line will probably largely play again. Maybe Chilwell might play instead of Mitchell, but I mean Munoz is a machine. Centre backs, they haven't got enough depth really to rotate. That central midfield doesn't matter for fantasy. Eze and Saul will probably be a little bit dependent on what happens at the weekend, I guess. But you probably okay with them. City is up in the air, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
It's
anyone
because
that
there's more options.
exactly. And it, like you say, it's all dependent on result really as well, which you're not going to know going into the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of adds into a little extension on that from FPL Rude. We play our City and Palace players and hope for the best. The answer is probably yes, but Mateta's the one I'd probably really be looking at potentially moving. I'm sure anyone with Mateta right now is wondering how to get to Watkins or lining up to go to Watkins. Here's a non-FPL one. Geordie Kakamura says, "Can Spurs do it?"
Ha! Of course you can. I hope you don't, but of course you can.
Olmo says, "Would you prioritize Watkins or Saka for the last two if you had neither?"
I think, oh, that's tough because I don't think Newcastle at home's great, but then I think Southampton away is decent. But then I think Tottenham at home, Man United away is pretty good. I'd probably go Watkins to be fair. I think I'd slightly edge for Watkins.
I'm not sure now. I think if I was buying one or the again, there's a little bit relevance in terms of what you're selling as well, right? So again, if you're looking at Mateta, you're thinking I'm drawn to Watkins, you might be really happy in midfielders. If you're not happy in midfielders, you perhaps drawn to Saka more. So there might even be that layer to it as well. I think if it was just everything removed, arguably the answer for me would be Saka off the toe
Fair
at
play.
this stage.
We've not helped him at all there, have we?
No, not really. Right, we're not very good at FPL, so let's segue this. It is a question from FPL Slippers. What's your view on what happened at the City Ground after the final whistle? For those who haven't seen it, Nottingham Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis walked onto the pitch at the end of the game and got involved in a discussion with Nuno. Now, before I say anything, and we spoke about it a little bit yesterday on our Patreon Q&A, I was obviously at Tottenham, so wasn't watching the game. Got back on the train and all I could see was messages of like Nuno should resign, and I'm like, what's going on here, right? Gary Neville's tweeting, he's like, he should resign tonight and stuff, and I'm like, wow, this has got to be like incredibly bad, where he's kind of made
Gonna
Nuno's
chin you.
position look like untenable and stuff. And I tell you, my honest reaction when I saw the clip was, where's the rest of it?
I think that's because of the expectation that was set when you saw those tweets and
A little
messages,
bit,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, because I so my context on it was I hadn't seen or heard anything about it, right? And was it? Did you say was it the Q&A we did where I
We
found
talked
out
about it a
about it?
little bit
Yeah.
yesterday.
So I didn't have that kind of dramatic expectation set, but so when I went and watched it, I was like, oh bloody hell, yeah, that's not on or anything. But I wasn't quite on the page. Never did it come into my headspace. Oh, he needs to resign tonight. I've just more thought that is very, very unprofessional and childish management. Like that, just like what are you doing? I think he made himself look like a tit more than anyone.
He's done that a few times. I think, yeah, listen, a football owner can't go on a football pitch unless invited to do so by a manager to celebrate an achievement or something like that. And you'd probably get that more at a lower level. Like, I can't believe that, if Tottenham did win, Daniel Levy is not going to be on the bus, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's going to have nothing to do with it. So I think there are exceptional circumstances, particularly if you've got like I don't know, a fan related owner at a lower level is completely understandable. That you think of people in the past, like sort of like Jack Walker at Blackburn, Dave Whelan at Wigan, you think, yeah, it's completely understandable you'd get involved with the celebrations. But generally speaking, probably a big club, I'm sure Nottingham Forest want to be treated as a big club. Yeah, you football owner, in my opinion, should not go on a pitch. However, I think from where he's from, it's more of a done thing in Greece. So I think culturally, it's not abnormal to him to do it. There have been incidences there was one incident, I think it was at Pauk a few years ago, Pauk Salonika, where the owner walked on a pitch with a gun.
Oh my god!
Yeah, game obviously got abandoned.
Oh, so this is nothing compared to
he wasn't
that.
he wasn't happy with the referee. And the way it was sold, again, you kind of what am I going to see here? It was like Marinakis had gone on the pitch and he'd like lost it with Nuno. And when you watch it back, it's almost like he's going to walk past Nuno. Nuno gets in a little conversation with Oliver Skip, who Nuno would have had at Tottenham. So it's like they're shaking hands and stuff. And Marinakis looks like he's going to walk past him. Is he going for the ref? Do you think?
Maybe. I don't know because then they
Because he's
very
walking
quickly.
past Nuno before there's any conversation even happens. It's almost to me like Nuno says something that stops him.
Oh
And I
yeah.
could imagine it's like, don't do that. Oh, do you know what I mean?
Now that you said that, I can see that. And yeah, that would kind of add up because that feels very. I was going to say out of character. That's not the right thing. It feels very unusual to go and have a go at your manager or your team on the pitch. But if he was going to see the referee, I'm not saying that's right, but I could kind of understand partially that logic, even though he shouldn't do it. So I've got to say though, I thought Nuno, if that is what happened, I thought he handled that amazingly well.
Oh, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah, Nuno's interviews afterwards and even his manner on the pitch in that moment was outstanding. He dealt with that really well, and he's dealt with his football team incredibly well also because it's easy for us to look on the outside and go, they've probably blown it. And by the way, if they win their two games, there's every chance they're still going to get in the Champions League, so it's not done. But feeling like, a little bit of, and actually, they confirmed qualification for Europe on Sunday, and that's a magnificent achievement for that football club to get into Europe. And this is what Marinakis wants. One of the things you could not label as a criticism is of him is he absolutely wants the best thing for Nottingham Forest. There is no doubt. If you ever listen to interviews of him, he is so driven about trying to take them towards the top of football food chain, if you will. Um, and anything ever slows with Forest, you'll want to go in a different direction. And I'd fear that a little bit for Nuno at the start of next season. If, let's say, they didn't win any of the last two games, they finished seventh and it's Europa League or Europa Conference League, and then they struggle at the start of next season, it will sound ridiculous, but I can see Marinakis changing because
yeah.
he's just so driven for continual progression. That has positives and negatives because I think Nuno should be given the chance that there probably will be a rough patch at some point next year. He's earned the right to carry through that as long as the players are still in support of him, basically.
It would be interesting to know if he was, like you say, if he was going. What was his intention? Was he going to the referee or was he going to Nuno? Because
It's
if
not clear. And also, because I haven't watched the game, I can't. Oh, was there dodgy decisions?
nah,
I've heard nothing about that,
only reason
right?
I
So
say that is if the intention was to go and berate the players and Nuno, that, as a Forest player and manager, that has got to be concerning considering the season they've had. If that was the intention.
yeah, look, he's passionate. He shouldn't be going on the football pitch, like bottom line, right? But I think it's part of his character and who he is. And I think Forest fans would largely say we're very happy with our owner, and that's fine. So there'll be more understanding of it than we are on the outside, probably. Yeah, if he has gone on there with the intention to go for a particular player or something like that. I mean, he spoke about the statement afterwards that he put on Instagram, which I suspect was written by someone else in the same way I suspect the statement after the incident at Everton last year on Nottingham Forest socials was probably written by Marinakis, by the way. But he put the statement out and saying there was obviously real frustration with what happened with the Tyrell Aminier incident. So Aminier obviously collided with a post. Sean Ellis Massey should unfortunately put the offside flag up because it is so clear. I get it, rules. Aminier collides with a post. Physios check him out. He's in clear pain. They give a thumbs up. You can see Nuno's like that thumbs up. Okay, like and Nuno's like yeah, and then he calls someone over and he makes the change. Awani obviously can't continue, so he's kind of like a walking passenger for the last couple of minutes, and they nearly end up losing the game. So that obviously causes like a huge frustration. Awani, by the way, unfortunately, he's probably going to have an operation. We think
Oh
on an
damn!
abdominal injury. He's got like
Because of that.
internal issues. So I hope he's okay and stuff. So how they managed to get to the point that he wasn't going to be substituted is it's obviously a fuck up from various people involved in that scenario. That's what he said his main frustration was. But then there's no one on the pitch to take that frustration out of. Unless I don't know, was he looking for Awani? To no, but I don't know. To even say like, why didn't you say you fucked? Or, do you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, God knows
You
what was
can't
going
tell
through
from
his
the
mind.
pictures.
No, just not a good look, no matter what the intention
No,
was.
it's not. And as soon as it's one of if you'd have been watching it live, you'd have been, uh-oh. What's going to happen here? Yes, he shouldn't go on the pitch. I also understand why it's happened with him. I think if it was any other owner, though, we'd probably be going, you absolutely cannot do that. And it's a shame that that's kind of again become the conversation around Forest, where they'll be disappointed, but they should also be extremely happy with what they've achieved this football season. To have qualified for Europe with 2 games to spare is a brilliant
Yeah, they
achievement. And
smashed
top
it.
five is not gone yet. I don't think they'll do it now, but it's not gone yet. If they win the last 2 games and don't make it, they'll be very unlucky, and that will be because Villa have won their 2 games as well. Next on the agenda, Crystal Palace. I'm going to talk a little bit about them because we didn't have long enough really to kind of go into them yesterday. I think Palace of a football club have grown really well over the last decade of being perceived as this club that was a little bit of a yo-yo. They went through some very, very difficult times in the late 2000s and early 2010s where the club was legitimately on the brink financially on a couple of occasions. Palace fans will often reference a victory at Sheffield Wednesday, which kept them up from going into League One. And there was extreme concern of what would happen under that circumstance if they went down. This isn't their first kind of FA Cup final rodeo. They obviously lost to Manchester United about a decade ago in extra time. Had got themselves in front that day as well. We also had a dramatic final with United in 1990 as well. This football club essentially has never won a major trophy. It is huge for them. They are part of our Premier League furniture now. They have been here for 10 plus years. And over the majority of that period, I've kind of bar the first couple of years, not really be in any danger of getting relegated, but also at the same time, not really close to pushing on. I think back to last pre-season, and a few people are saying, I fancy them as to kind of have the season Forest have had, as be like outsiders to push for the top
Yeah,
four,
because
top
they
six this
finished
season,
very strong, didn't they?
didn't they? Yeah. And they finished strongly again this season, but they had a pretty bad start. I think they've changed their model in terms of signings, which has really helped them over the last decade. When you look at the squad now and you think of kind of domestic homegrown players like Dean Henderson for a goalkeeper is still relatively young, Mark Gay, obviously Eze, before that invested in people like Elise. You've got like a core group of young British players, identifiable, something if you're a Palace fan, I think you take real pride in. I'm very happy to go and support these players. I think they probably know where they're at in terms of the food chain at the moment, that they've actually got so many good players at the moment. They really do. Adam Wharton's another one where they're probably going to be at a stage of selling one good player most years. A little bit like Leicester got in that. You think of like Harry Maguire, Ben Chilwell, Mahrez and Kante before that. Leicester kind of got in that pattern. And I foresee Palace in that pattern a little bit now. But if they're only selling one, they're still
It's
keeping some other
sustainable.
extremely
Yep.
good footballers there, right? Because I look at them at the weekend and I had time to think about it because they're out playing us so bloody badly on Sunday. And I realised we had basically a second team on the pitch, but I generally our 11 v their 11 are struggling to put any of our players in their team.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
Um, Benson Call would have been a debate, and only that's kind of partly because Adam Wharton was unavailable. I think in terms of their structure, I think Glasner pulls off the back three best at the moment. And remember, he's had more time than someone like Amrim. They were very brave in their press. I think we have a little bit of a stigma with them that because they will funnel into a back five off the ball, that they're difficult to break down, and they are. But they put on an aggressive hunting press against us that was really good and caused a lot of high turnovers, and they had very successful transitions from there. The back three are very good. Essentially, Mark Gay is an absolutely outstanding defender. I think Maxence Lacroix had a really good first season. Essentially, had a little bit of chopping and changing at first. He couldn't work out which way they wanted to do it. Since Lacroix went in the middle, it seemed kind of improved right from there. Richards is solid. He's no frills at right sided centre back, but he's very solid. And you should remember they've had some injuries in that position as well. Someone like Chaddy Riyad, I don't know if he'd be good enough. None of us have ever really seen him. Munoz at right wing back is another player would definitely go into that category. I mean, talking about Trent replacements, it sounds like Liverpool probably going for Jeremy Frimpong from Bayer Leverkusen, by the way. But Munoz, he's an extraordinary athlete.
Yeah, he's been a hell of a find for them, isn't he?
Absolutely brilliant. Yes, every time I see him, he's one of them. Every time I see him, yep, you're getting better, you're getting better, you're getting better. Um, you know, with all due respect, United are a much bigger club than Palace. But if United had him, someone like him playing wing back, okay, going to change the game. He needs to work on his final moment a little bit more, but I see continued progression with him. In midfield, you've got Wharton is a good player. Will Hughes had a good season. Jefferson Lerma is a very different profile player. Daichi Kamada has done well when he's played very recently. Again, remember Cheikh Doucouré, heavily linked with Liverpool going back a couple of years. Barely seen him because of injuries the last couple of years. And up front is bits of stardust now in Eze, Sarr, and Mateta. And remember Mateta before Glasner went in there? People were just like, he's like a car horse, mate. And
Yeah.
now people are like, oh, I'd have him as my nine and stuff like that.
I
Good
think that's the thing
players.
with Glasner. It's like systematically, like you say, and structurally, he's got them spot on and the tactics and everything. But it's the individual coaching to improve players as well. I think that possibly goes under the radar.
Yeah, I'm obviously looking for new managers all the time. Right? And every time I want to look at one, I think it's not you. It's not you. That was quite impressive at the weekend. You know, I don't really want a new manager that would play a back three. And it's not to suggest that he'd even leave Crystal Palace for Tottenham, by the way. But I also think, again, it's the same thing. Palace fans will be sensible enough to know that if Oliver Glasner continues to do well, Oliver Glasner is going to end up managing someone in the Champions League again, right? It was a real coup when Palace got him. He'd been
Yeah,
linked
yeah.
to bigger clubs than Palace in the summer previous. So, good manager, good team, loads of sellable assets. So even if Palace did lose, I think Gay is probably the most likely one to go this summer. As loads would be
But
interested
then
in.
you back them to get the replacement correct
Well,
as well,
this
right?
is it. Yeah, yeah. They've got a model that's really working for them. Good side, good manager, very very capable. Let me tell you of winning on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a lot of time for Palace. I don't know where it stems from, but yeah, over the years I've always kind of had a bit of a soft spot for them, and I couldn't really tell you why.
Well, I don't because I think Selhurst Park's a shithole. Now, I've told you that a lot. And I'm sorry, I don't have anything against Palace. I do have an issue with the fact that the Arthur Wait stand passed the health and safety certificate for away fans. That is the worst away end in the league. Sorry.
I have heard
So
similar.
after everything I've said, I'd sack them off in a
Go on, the
in a
Palace. Win
heartbeat.
on Saturday.
Good luck to Eagles fans on Saturday. We will talk Manchester City more. Johnny Pringle's guesting on Clash to Correspondence this week. That'll be available on Thursday. What's next on my agenda, Clayton? I can't remember.
Euro roundup, the different
Ah,
leagues,
yeah. So,
Bundesliga. Also, can we just talk
cut
about this tradition of fucking throwing beer on everyone? I'm
in
definitely turning.
Germany.
Yeah, I'm turning into.
Congratulations to Eric Dyer and Harry Kane. I'm
I,
delighted for both of them.
I'm definitely turning into an old man, and this is completely irrelevant to what we're about to talk about. But you know, in like Formula One, when they celebrate on the podium, they spray champagne. Like no one is enjoying themselves. They all look like they fucking hate it. It's the same with the beer thing. Like the guy throwing the beer is having a great time. No one enjoys being. So I'm gonna get the whole. I bet you're fun at parties. I don't get it. It's a waste of good alcohol. Just like I just don't get
It's
it.
the throwing the beer stuff, isn't it? Beer is expensive now, people. Stop throwing your beer.
But it's like no one looks like they're enjoying themselves when they get drenched here. Anyway, we digress.
Have you
Who
seen
won the
Mike? Have
leagues?
you seen Michael Elise?
Yeah, on the
Wow, Michael Elise looked like I'm going to kill someone.
he clenched his fist about to throw a left hook, didn't he?
um, there's a couple of leagues quite tight. We've been keeping an eye on a couple of them. So Napoli had obviously got themselves 3 points clear of Inter Milan in Serie A. They blew a lead twice at the weekend at home to Genoa, drew 2-2. Inter won away from home. So there's 1 point between them, advantage to Napoli. 2 games to go. The head-to-head playoff game, because that's how it would be decided if they finish level on points, the playoff game. Now looks unlikely. That would need one win each, a defeat for Napoli and the draw for Inter Milan. But squeaky bum time. Could you imagine Antonio Conte if Napoli blow it from here?
All-timer press conference incoming.
There'll be a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Sporting and Benfica, the two teams going for it in Liga Portugal, played each other at the weekend. It was a 1-1 draw. Goal difference is still very tight. There's three between them, but it is irrelevant. Level on points in Portugal it is decided by head-to-head results. So
And
that is now advantage to Sporting. If they beat Vitoria at the weekend, they will be champions. If you want something to do on Saturday, here's a little tip for you. Because there's no obviously Premier League football at 3 o'clock on a Saturday. I don't think there's any live football at 3 o'clock on Saturday. There is some that you can watch in the UK. Take this for a tip from me. 2:30 p.m. Sky Sports Plus. Get Freiburg against Eintracht Frankfurt on your television. It's the final day of the Bundesliga season. Frankfurt are third on 57 points. They have won once since being beaten by the mighty Tottenham Hotspur in the Europa League quarter-final. And Freiburg since then have won four and drawn one, I believe. Freiburg are 2 points behind Frankfurt in fourth. They play each other on the final day in Freiburg. Freiburg 2 points behind them. If Freiburg win, they're obviously guaranteed a place in next season's Champions League. Should they not do so, they are in trouble and probably going to miss out because Dortmund are fifth, 1 point behind Freiburg, three behind Frankfurt. They host relegated Kiel on the final day of the season in front of the yellow wall. So Dortmund, despite being fifth, are highly likely to get into the Champions League still because Freiburg and Frankfurt are playing each other. Now, there are 3 goals in it, and it's goal difference first in the Bundesliga. Frankfurt, 3 points clear of Dortmund. So if they lose, in theory, they could still finish top four and go through with Freiburg. Dortmund are 3 goals behind them. Goals scored better. So if Frankfurt lose by one, a 2 goal victory for Dortmund would be enough to jump Frankfurt.
Damn, I hope Dortmund are playing at the same time because that would be fun to
Yeah, of
keep an eye
course, all
on.
the games at the same time. So I think Sky have got this weekend. I think they're showing bizarrely Bayern Munich's game, like, but on Sky Sports Plus, I think they've got every Bundesliga game. I think this weekend, and the kickoffs of those games are 2:30, and the FA Cup final kicks off at 4:30.
Lovely.
I'm here for you all, people. Clayton, let's do Euro Focus.
We are going to Seville, but not because we're covering Sevilla. We are covering Real Betis. And yeah, I didn't know that they're actually based in Seville. So my geography.
Did you not?
No, my geography is not very
That's a
good.
big derby. That
Yeah,
they don't like each other. It's well known.
not at all. I'll get to the why as well. They're two very different clubs with values that are completely different and everything. But they being Real Betis, sorry, were founded in 1907. It was a group of students that actually founded them, and they started the name as Sevilla Balompié, which literally means Seville football. In 1914, they then merged with a team Betis.
Hold on. Sorry. Balompié is football in Spanish.
Well, that's how it translates on the translator.
I'm not. Carry on.
Now, go on.
I'm not sure about it. I just can't believe I never have heard anyone go, oh, Balompié.
Well, they're on their history page. It says Sevilla Balompié, Seville football.
All right.
Maybe it's something that gets lost in translation. But yeah, 1914, they then merged with Betis Football Club. This was like a bit of a breakaway group from their city rivals, Sevilla FC. But that's when they earned the royal title Real, like how we mentioned Real Madrid about a month or so ago, from King Alfonso. And that's how they became Real Betis, Balompié, however it's pronounced. But yeah, yeah. But the identity of Betis is quite different to Seville. So, like from my research, it looks like Sevilla Football Club became more associated with like the elites in the city, whereas Betis was always more of a working class club. They wear green and white colours, but they've always, again, from reading around and stuff, it looks like they've always kind of been open to people from all backgrounds and became known as like the People's Club. And yeah, their motto is literally Viva el Betis Manque Pierde, which means long live Betis, even when they lose. And even when they lose checks out because, yeah, their history has had a lot of losing, unfortunately, for them. But they did have one historic moment of success way back in 1935. So this is probably their most, the highlight of their history, definitely in La Liga, to be fair. So they actually won their first and only La Liga title. That was in 1935. And they were coached by an Irishman who goes by the name of Patrick O'Connell.
Brilliant name that as well.
Yeah, it's a very cool name. I love the Irish. So Patrick O'Connell, he's probably a legend in Real Betis history. But yeah, their first and only ever La Liga title came in 1935. And again, by the sounds of it, that wasn't like an expected achievement or anything. It was definitely like an underdog story. But then soon after that, obviously the Spanish Civil War broke out, right? So they kind of struggled for decades after that, and they bounced between the first and second divisions and stuff. And at one point, I think it was in 1947. Yeah, 1947, they actually dropped down to the third division. So they've played in all three divisions in Spain. And for a club of their size, that was like unthinkable. But to kind of show the determination and loyalty of their fan base, they actually broke a record, a national record for attendance. And it wasn't even in La Liga, it was in the third division. So that shows how devoted their fans are. Like to get to the third division and still break attendance records, then pretty impressive. I mentioned in La Liga they've not had much success. They've won only one league title, but I don't think their expectations are to do much more than that, to be honest. But in the Copa del Rey, they've had a bit more success. They lifted it in 1977. They beat Athletic Bilbao in a final that went all the way to penalties. They've won it again in 2005. And one of the manager that they won it under, Lorenzo Serra Ferrer, again, from research, he sounds like a Real Betis legend. He's
I was going to say sounds Irish.
yeah, it sounds very Irish. He does, but yeah, he sounds like he's one of the most respected figures in their kind of club history and stuff. But that win actually sent them through into the Champions League qualifiers for the next season. And their most recent victory in the Copa del Rey came under the man that is still in charge, Manuel Pellegrini. He's been in charge since 2020, I think. But they actually won it in 2022. And again, it was on penalties, but they beat Valencia then. Their stadium is quite a nice one. It's called the Benito Villamarin Stadium. It's got around 60,000 fans. I'd
think that
not.
would surprise people. I think it's one of them. Oh, 60,000 plus. Yeah,
Yeah,
they've
it's decent.
remodeled it a lot over the last few years. I think might still be without a roof. I don't know if there's plans to put because it's massive. It's three-tier
Yeah.
stands. But most of it doesn't have a roof. I don't think. I don't know if there's considering what Barca and Madrid have done. And Atletico Madrid moving stadium as well. If there would be plans to add a roof to it, but yeah, it's probably one of the biggest stadiums that many of you might be kind of unfamiliar with in Spain, I guess.
Yeah, that surprised me when I saw how big it is. But I was on like a bit of a Reddit rabbit hole just going through the Real Betis stuff. And is it Hibs that have the anthem Sunshine on Leaf? That's like it
That's
always gets
correct.
clipped. So apparently Betis in Spain, I'm not saying it's like a Sunshine on Leaf, but they've got an anthem goes something like El Himno del Betis. And apparently that's one of like the best club anthems in Spain. But I need to try and actually go and find a video of that. But the vibe I was getting on Reddit was yeah, that's the same kind of impressiveness as what Hibs do with Sunshine on Leaf. But you've already mentioned about their rivalry with Sevilla. That's known as the El Gran Derby. And yeah, like I said, the vibe I got was like Sevilla, one of the more, I don't know how to say this politically correct, but just associated with the kind of the elite within the city, Betis more the working class. And I think naturally when that's the two kind of identities, you're going to get a lot of friction between the two clubs. So yeah, that's a lot on that's a bit on their rivalry. In terms of this season, they're actually sixth in La Liga, so they're obviously pushing for another European qualification spot. But this is their first ever. Oh yeah, the reason we're covering them, they're in the Europa Conference League final, and this will be their first ever European final. So they're playing Chelsea later in the month. They've had a pretty amazing run getting there, to be fair, and it's even more impressive because in the new league format, I think they were 15th or 16th, so they had to go into the playoffs. They didn't
They shouldn't have been finishing that position as a Spanish
not
club, in
at
fairness.
all. But then to obviously get in there and then have to go through and play everyone they did. They played Ghent from Belgium. They won that game, the tie, sorry. They then went into the round of 16, played Vitoria from Portugal. They obviously won, advanced. They played our friends from Poland, Jagiellonia. They
Yeah,
advanced.
Bologna.
And then the semi-finals, they won in extra time against Fiorentina. Anthony's obviously a player that I think a lot of people are aware. He's gone on loan there. He's done pretty well for himself. I think he's got 8 goals, few assists. Betis fans seem really happy with him. Isco, and a blast from the past. He's doing well for himself there. Mentioned Manuel Pellegrini. There's a few familiar faces and names that people will see in their squad. Hector Bellerin's there. Lo Celso's there. So yeah, a team that, I mean, domestically, sixth in La Liga is absolutely fine. But like you say, when they finished 15th, 16th in the Europa League, the Conference League phase, that definitely wouldn't have been expected. So to kind of recover and win all of those playoff and knockout ties to get to the final, I think is very impressive, despite the types of opponents they've had to play. But even playing Fiorentina wouldn't have been easy. And yeah, May the 28th, they play Chelsea in Poland. I forgot what part of Poland, but that's when the final is.
Wrocław, I think,
That's it.
is incorrect pronunciation. I'm sorry to Katarzyna and the people of Jagiellonia and other parts of Poland. I think there'd be a lot of this Betis teams quite familiar to people. I mean, Bellerin's not a starter,
He's
I
not a
don't
starter, I
think.
don't think, no.
People will
He's
know,
in their
obviously,
squad.
Ricardo Rodriguez, the Swiss
Yeah.
fullback. It's got a bit of a shot on him. Mark Bartra, who was at Barcelona, You'd mentioned Lo Celso, William Carvalho, Portuguese midfielder, is there. Anthony Isco, Pablo Fornals, formerly of West Ham, Cedric Bakambu, who I want to say featured quite heavily when Villarreal made the Champions League semi-finals, I think from
I'm not
memory.
sure.
And one for the Tottenham boys and girls to keep an eye on is Johnny Cardoso, American-born, who plays in midfield for them. Tottenham have an agreement to sign him in the summer if they want to take up the option. It's part of the deal where Betis ended up taking Lo Celso for like 5 million or something like a packet of crisps. Part of that, Tottenham negotiated a price for Cardoso that was under the valuation. So there's every expectation that Tottenham will activate that this summer. So I'm obviously particularly keen to keep an eye on Cardoso, and obviously in Pellegrini as a manager, we obviously know very well. So plenty of experience in that team that Chelsea will come up against in that final in a couple of weeks. And me and Clayton hold nothing against Chelsea. So go on, Betis.
Yeah. Viva el Betis, man que pierda.
Wow, that was nearly
That
nearly
felt all
good,
right.
Clates.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Where are they in the league now? Sixth. I was just
Sixth.
looking at. So mind you, there's 3 games to go in that league, and fifth. Yeah, obviously, Spain are getting an extra place as well. Fixtures aren't the best. They've still got to go to Atletico Madrid. They're 3 points behind
So
Villarreal.
they're 9 points clear of seventh. So like they don't need to
They'll
worry
be in
about what's
Europe
below.
again
Yeah.
next year.
But it's
Um,
like you say, 3 points to Villarreal ahead of them. So can they look to bridge that gap? You never know.
they've not played many games against English opposition, actually. They played Manchester United a few years ago in a quarter-final in the Europa League, which United ended up winning very comfortably. They played Chelsea before in Cup Winners' Cup in '98 when Chelsea went on to win it, and actually that's on this day, by the way. I'm not covering it because as I said, me and Clates don't really like Chelsea. That's on this day from 1998. Chelsea beat Stuttgart in the European Cup Winners' Cup final, and they also played Chelsea again in the group stage of the Champions League in 2006 because they were in that same group when Chelsea and Liverpool played each other. So they played Chelsea and Liverpool in the group stage of the Champions League, and inevitably finished third. What a rough draw for them to get, basically. So that was the 05-06 season. Other than that, I've not had. It's only Chelsea, United, Liverpool. I think they've played in terms of English sides. Decent sized club, well supported, big stadium, potential, experienced team. I do look at them and I think you'll need to re-energize that probably at some point because
A
as I
little
said, there's
bit,
some very
yeah.
experienced heads there that could play both ways in a European final.
That
I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one as well. That William Carvalho you mentioned, I forgot about him. He was at Sporting Lisbon, I think, and he is a he was a defensive midfielder. I don't know if he still is, but he was linked with like every top
Yeah.
club for ages, and he just never really went on and did anything. And I remember major tournaments, everyone would keep an eye on him for Portugal, but yeah, never really transpired to anything.
Good luck to Betis and Chelsea in the Conference League final. There's no Clayton and James show next week because I'm primarily busy elsewhere. And actually, to be fair, Clayton is as well. So we probably have Clayton and James probably next time on the day of the final. We'll probably have a bit more of a discussion about Inter Milan then is our plan. On this day, I'm going to talk about an FA Cup final, as I said. But before we do, I'm going to talk about Bradford City because Sunday was the 40th anniversary of the Bradford City fire disaster at Valley Parade in 1985. And I think it's a story that's not as reported on widely in the press as much as other significant and terrible tragedies, such as the Hillsborough disaster. Bradford City had won the Division 3 title that day, that season. That's probably part of the reason why they were actually awarded the trophy prior to their game with Lincoln City. Towards the end of the first half, a fire started in the main stand. It was a wooden stand at the time, and it's believed that someone dropped a cigarette that fell in between the boards of the stand, and there was a lot of debris underneath the stand that then lit. Unfortunately, within 4.5 minutes, the whole stand was covered in fire. 56 people lost their lives, 54 Bradford fans and two Lincoln City fans. There's a documentary on it, which I know one of our patrons, Andrew Sands, wanted to flag as well, which is on BBC iPlayer. Unforgotten, the Bradford City Fire, which is well worth a watch if anybody wants further details on that. But I wanted to mention that because that's just 40 years ago. That anniversary has passed. They weren't able to play at home for over 6 months.
Yeah.
It really is a terrible tragedy. And Bradford, we obviously covered on this day a few months ago when they beat Aston Villa in the League Cup semi-final and then obviously lost to Swansea in the final. Did, as we'd said previously, clinch promotion back into the third tier a couple of weeks ago. On this day is the FA Cup final from 2006, Clayton. Any memories?
Uh, no, I remember the 2006 Champions League final. I don't remember the 2006 FA
Oh, I
Cup
remember
final.
that one as well, oddly enough.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet you
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Who was the
I
2006 one?
sweated some buckets that night, let me tell you, mate. Could you
No,
imagine how that was for me? You had 10 men. EO should not be named and scored the goal as well. But you couldn't have written it any worse, man. Oh my God.
who would this one have been? Because the year before was us against Man United. I can't remember this one. Was this West
Uh,
Ham Liverpool?
yes, you are
Yeah.
correct. It's the classic Liverpool West Ham game, which was the final of six, I believe, that was played in Cardiff, all of which featured one of Arsenal, Liverpool, or Manchester United, and on a couple of occasions, two of those teams. So Liverpool had obviously been Champions League winners the year before. West Ham had got back into the league the previous summer and finished mid-table, did pretty well under Alan Pardew. And obviously the previous Sunday, Lasagna Gate had happened where Tottenham had the shits. No Arsenal conspiracy there, by the way. Although, as I said on Patreon last week, proven that Lasagna wasn't actually the cause.
I've not listened to the
It's
Patreon pod from last week.
true. Yeah.
I'll give that a listen.
Although that narrative will never go away, people
No,
will
it's
always
planted
believe
now.
that. Correct. Absolutely. So Liverpool, obviously, as you would expect, big favourites going in to the tie against West Ham. West Ham would take the lead midway through the first half with a classic own goal. Dean Ashton sends West Ham's right back Lionel Scaloni down the right hand side. Our old mate Jamie Carragher is steaming back in to try and get towards the cross, and he just runs back a little bit too fast and gets slightly ahead of the ball. So he tries to flick out his right foot to like backheel it backwards away from goal. And it's what happened next. You can all obviously guess. He completely missed it and it hit his standing left foot and went in.
Dissect that on Monday Night Football, mate.
Blinding. I mean, to be fair, he's had it played back to him on a few analyses and he does rip the piss out of it himself, which is much easier to do when you go on to win. And West Ham would double their lead. Shortly afterwards, Matthew Etherington got a shot in from the edge of the box, which Pepe Reina spilled, and Ashton was there first on the rebound to prod it underneath Reina, and it dribbled into the corner of the net. West Ham and Suj 2-0 up in an FA Cup final. Who would have funked it? But people remember this, of course, as not only a great final, but also the Gerrard final. And I can tell you there aren't many FA Cup finals that get labelled with one individual, and this one did. Liverpool had one goal ruled out for offside, which when you see it back on the TV against Peter Crouch is mightily close, by the way. It's not easy to tell if he's on or off, which would have been a Gerrard assist. But Gerrard did assist Jibril Cisse, who'd come in off the left-hand side, ball over the top from Gerrard sort of from 40, 50 yards, and he's running on the diagonal, and Cisse meets it, waits for it to come, volleys it into the corner. 10 minutes to go half time, Liverpool got their goal back, and you expect them to go and push on from there, which they do. Understandably, West Ham find themselves under a lot of pressure. Gerrard equalises to make it 2-2 in the second half. Diagonal play to the right-hand side. It gets dropped down. No West Ham player reacts to it. Gerrard striding onto it, and you know he scored before
Yeah,
he's even hit it.
smack it.
Smashes it into the roof of the net. 2-2 is only one winner from there. But the Hammers didn't read the script, playing in their all-white Tottenham kit. Sorry, not sorry. Paul Konchesky goes down the left-hand side and scores a goal not dissimilar to Pedro Porro's goal in Norway last week. It's a cross, admittedly from the left-hand side rather than Porro's right-hand side. It's about 30 yards out. He's trying to sling across into the back post. And it's one of them. It's gone over the keeper and you're just praying. Because if it lands in that corridor underneath the bar and inside the post, goalkeeper invariably has got no chance. That's what happens. West Ham retake the lead and grimly try and hold on. But they'd had their own opportunities as well. And then this moment comes in injury time where because Liverpool have thrown so many attacking players forward, Gerrard's playing like a deep lying midfielder. Again, a ball into the box gets cleared, comes out centrally. And I don't know how to describe it as 35 yards, 40 yards, but whatever it is, a modern footballer does not shoot from there.
Yeah, no
He's
chance.
recycling the ball, he's carrying, he's going wide. Gerard, because he had that Hollywood in him, and I say that a lot about him, where people remember the Hollywood stuff, and a lot of the Hollywood stuff didn't come off. But he has hit this goal that is just absolutely
It's so
outrageous.
iconic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is one of the most iconic ever FA Cup final goals. No mere human or he shoots from there. It's outrageous. He shouldn't shoot. You can't criticize it because of what he does. And despite the fact he hits it from so far out and it's bottom corner rather than top corner, he hits it so well. Shaka Hislop hasn't got a prayer. He's got absolutely no chance.
It's so iconic. You know how bad my memory is. I would have been 2006. I was going to secondary school. How old are you when you go to secondary school? 12, 13. I remember exactly
11,
where.
Clayton,
Oh,
11.
11. I remember exactly where I was watching that goal. And I can still picture it like so clearly. Yeah, there's not many goals that stick with me, but that one definitely does.
Yeah, an absolutely wow moment. So game goes to extra time. John Onorisa, he of famous long range striking as well, also scored an absolute corker that went just over as well. West Ham could have nicked it again, you know. They had a set piece come in and it ended up flicking off Nigel Reo-Coker's back, I think. And it's going like right in the corner. And Reina just about gets a touch on it, and he'd had an indifferent game in goal. He gets a touch on it, hits the inside of the post, comes back across to Marlon Harewood on the volley. It's pretty much near the open goal. He's about 8 yards out, but he's been suffering with cramp and he can barely move.
Uh,
He shanks it
Pain.
wide. Game goes to pens, and Liverpool won 3-1 on penalties. Reina saved three penalties. Teddy Sheringham was actually the only West Ham player to convert from the spot. I feel like Liverpool won so many trophies on penalties. I know they lost to PSG on penalties this year, but they have this. We associate with Germany. It's, oh shit,
Oh, just
Germans and
like
the
a
penalties.
clutch.
It's such an
Yeah.
English psyche thing, even though Germany have lost penalty shootouts as well. Particularly Bayern Munich. Thank you. 2012. There you go. There's one for the Chelsea fans. But Liverpool are always, when Liverpool go to penalties, I always think, oh, they'll win. Always. Birmingham 2001, this final, Champions League final 05, the two cup finals with Chelsea, League Cup and FA Cup final in the same season. There's more. And at Cardiff, League Cup final 2012 is loads. I feel like I've won loads of trophies on penalties. I'm not taking anything away from just saying. I'd like to
No,
get to a cup. I'll
they've
take
got that
penalties next.
clutch gene,
I'll
don't they?
take penalties next Wednesday now. You know.
Yeah, would you?
Yeah. I wouldn't fancy us to win them, but I'd probably take that. Yeah.
Random thought on that. You said Paul Konchesky scored for West Ham. He played for Liverpool, right?
That's correct. Yeah. He was one of I think Roy Hodgson's magic signings. Also
Oh, so
played
that
for
that would have
my
been
team as
after
well.
then. So it
Oh
was.
yeah, played for Liverpool after. Yeah,
Okay.
several years
I
afterwards.
wasn't sure if it was before.
The lineups for the record: Liverpool was Reina, Finnan, Carragher, Hippier, Risa, Gerard, Alonso, Mohamed Sissoko, Harry Kewell, Peter Crouch, Jabril, Cisse, Jan Kromkamp. You might not remember, too familiar Dutch defensive player, came on as a substitute. So too did Dietmar Hamann, who was an excellent footballer. Fernando Morientes
Baller.
came on for Kewell early in the second half. Excuse me. Liverpool's unused substitutes was Jerzy Dudek and Jimmy Traore, who scores one of the most iconic FA Cup own goals in a third round tie at Burnley, which I want to say was the year before this. West Ham was Hislop, Lionel Scaloni, Anton Ferdinand, Danny Gabidon, Paul Konchesky. Yossi Benayoun was a tidy player, played for yourselves, Liverpool as well,
And
Chelsea.
Chelsea, yeah.
Nigel Reo-Coker was really highly rated, he was young captain of this team. Cole Fletcher, no, not the one from Harchester United, the one who played for West Ham. Matthew Effenson, Marlon Harewood, and Dean Ashton, whose name always crops up every now and again in terms of discussions of what could he have been if he hadn't had injuries. Because he
Really,
had
in
to
that kind of
retire.
discussion.
Yeah, I mean, he basically picked up his worst injury in getting called up for the England squad and never played for England.
Yeah, but like, how good was he? Because I never
Very,
associated. Really? Okay, fair
yeah,
play.
very. Um, I think Dean Ashton would have played a lot for England. A
Oh wow.
lot. Like he would have played for England a lot more than say Crouch did. I think it
Yeah.
would have taken a lot of say Crouch's time. I
Yeah,
think.
I agree with that. I just didn't realize he was kind of that highly rated if it weren't for the injuries sort of thing.
Yeah, he was a super talent. You might remember a goal he scored at Old Trafford, a bicycle kick, and I think United had maybe already won the league or they were close to winning it. I think it's 08-09 season. No, it must be earlier than that. He scores a bite. He scores the ball's spinning and he's leaning backwards. He's having to walk back onto it and manages to arc and scissor and puts it in the top corner. And the whole of the Stretford end claps. Like it was quite like Kane in a lot of ways, actually. A lot of similarities to Harry Kane. Yeah, he would have had an outstanding career, and with all due respect, he wouldn't have stayed at West Ham. He'd have ended up playing for one of the top clubs in this country, I'm sure. West Ham used Teddy Sheringham, who must have been at least 64 by this point, as a substitute. Bobby Zamora, also formerly Tottenham. Zamora was one of the players to miss a penalty. It was Konchesky and Ferdinand also missed penalties. The Scottish international Christian Daly was a used substitute. James Collins was an unused substitute. West Ham substitute goalkeeper was Jimmy Walker. The two clubs managed by Rafa Benitez, and Alan Pardew, who I don't believe did a dance when West Ham scored in this final, but did the last time
It was
Crystal Palace
Palace, yeah.
played in an FA Cup final. Don't Eagles fans, don't do your dancing until it's won.
Correct.
That's on this day from 2006.
Lovely stuff. Well covered. What's on the
Thank you,
menu
sir.
for the rest of the week?
Ask James is tomorrow, and I can now confirm that will be in the afternoons. It's scheduled for 2 p.m. UK time tomorrow. Clash to Correspondence Thursday is Manchester City versus Bournemouth with Johnny Pringle and Neil Grover. We'll be discussing obviously City, top five, cup final, FPL assets, Bournemouth assets with Neil for game week 38, and they're obviously still in contention for eighth place as well, but need a few favours from teams playing Brentford and Brighton at this stage, and they've got to win their own games obviously as well. And on Friday, we'll get this out nice and early for you. Lee Jackson, our Aston Villa correspondent, will be joining me for a chat on Villa assets ahead of obviously the game against Tottenham Friday night, their own top five race, bit of reflection on their Champions League season. And Lee's having an extraordinary season and FPL as well, much to the amazement of every correspondent who can't quite believe where he is at the moment. But
Is he top?
he's pissed the correspondent league. I'm second.
Go on, Lee. Fair
Yeah,
play.
don't say much for most of the correspondents that I'm second, by the way. But yeah, Lee's 1K or 2K, something like that. He's having
I'm
an
just,
extraordinary
yeah,
season. I don't know who's pressing the buttons for him, but well done. So Lee will be with me on Friday to talk Villa and a bit of FPL as well. If you're
lovely
watching
stuff.
on YouTube, smash a like, hit the sub button. It's truly helpful for us. If you listen to the audio, a 5-star review does go a very long way. If you'd like to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. For the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, Matt Child.